Love it. Welcome, everybody. This is the Codtacular podcast, episode number 5. It's Puckett with Big Timer as usual, and we've added a third misshapen goat to the logo. I don't know if you guys can tell, but we have a very special third goat joining the show permanently now. We got Rambo Ray on the mic, and for those who don't know Rambo Ray, he was one of the original personalities that I got to know in the Call of Duty scene. One of the original captains, one of the original in-game leaders, one of the original analysts that I converted from a pro player to a broadcaster, and he's been hiding in an Activision studio for the last 3 years, and no one has heard from him since. So, Ray, can we start at the very beginning, and then we'll get to where we're at right now? When did you start competing in Call of Duty? How long have you and Will known each other?
Jesus. Well, first off, it was 5.5 years at Sledge, just so we can put that on the board.
5.5. Sorry, not
really
3.
5.5. 5.5 years. Yeah, we're old, dude. We're old people, man. But yeah, no, dude, it's been actually it's a funny story, kind of dating back to like PS2 days of online video games. Me and Big Timer played games that were called Black Hawk Down and Battlefield 2, and we actually didn't really know each other personally back then, but that's when we started competing, and we saw each other's names, and we kind of later on, skipping ahead, we met each other on Call of Duty 4, and we're like, hey, wait a second, I know you. I've played against you before. And then
people still don't realize that Black Hawk Down was like...
literally Call of Duty.
It was the foundation for why you and I were good at Call of Duty. It's the same mechanics, the same controls on the PlayStation controller, like even jumping around corners and like drop-shotting and doing all this
everything was in there. All the same mechanics.
This is a game that came off the Josh Hartnett film? Black Hawk Down?
Okay. It was a derived game. I mean, the online multiplayer didn't have anything to do with it. It's what you would expect, like a move, but the single player was kind of derived off the movie, I think. But yeah, multiplayer was like, even the controls were literally the same. Reloading was like square, and then your drop shotting was circle, and then jumping was X, and honestly, it was like a carbon copy of what kind of COD became almost, to an extent where playing Call of Duty just felt so natural to us when we started playing it. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Like we started playing way back. I started video games when I was a kid. I mean, I don't know if anyone saw the movie I was in. It's I think Puckett, you saw that. But,
Ray, you were cutting out like crazy for me. Will, is he cutting out for you?
No, I hear him.
You hear him perfectly. Okay. Well, I apologize. Hopefully he's coming over the stream perfectly.
Yeah, am I coming to stream okay?
Is he clear, guys? Does he sound great? Because he looks great. They all said, I missed that shiny head. They love you, Ray. All right. Actually, I believe they're referring to Big Timer. But Ray, sorry, pick up where you left off.
Yeah, so I started playing video games very young. My grandma actually is the one that got me into it, which is kind of crazy. Most people have those stories about their brothers and sisters getting into video games. My grandma's the one that was playing Pac-Man and Mario on the NES for, I mean, I'm sure a majority of the chat's probably wasn't even born when that kind of stuff came around. It's kind of funny. But yeah, I started playing video games when I was young. Started competing on game battles when I was 15 years old. It's after it was called, I think it was called SOCOM Battles right before I started playing.
SOCOM Battles.
Yeah, it was literally called SOCOM Battles. The good stuff. And then they changed it to game battles, and then that's when they started bringing out a ton of games on the website. And back then it was like super like, oh man, it's so different, because it was like to get a match you had to kind of submit a ticket, and then you had to like report in a way that was obviously, there's not really any proof back then, so it was basically a judge system where everyone had to be respectful of the competitive matter of what was going on, and disputes and everything were kind of, I guess, kind of similar. But the games and how it was played back then was so different. Like the competitive aspect of how people were is more of a culture than anything kind of a phenomenon was what it become now. But the roots and everything that we've come from is obviously not the same anymore. And we can talk about it a little later, but I kind of miss that feel, honestly. There's times where I kind of look back on things and the excitement that you had playing these matches, and very much trying to be, it was all about being the best in the game, and it just kind of still is, but back then you weren't really playing for anything besides your kind of own rep.
It was about respect, bro.
I
remember like at the end of each game, even when you won, didn't you have to like, you had to go in and fill out a ticket with like notes of how the match went down, and you
I
had to
admit that I lost this game to these noobs. I hate them. It was 3-2.
It's so easy now, dude. You go in there, you click the number of wins, and if someone says they won and they didn't, you just take a screenshot of your phone, and you're all good. Like, there's no struggle.
We got apps these days, man. We got apps.
Yeah, that's great.
So what game did you start teaming with Will in? Because I came in 2009. It was COD 4. And you two were on the same squad on Extravagant at the time, right?
So COD 4 came out in late 07. Me and Big T, I think, started teaming like very end of that year to start of 08, we started playing these game battles tournaments or game battles ladders together. Back then, game battles was like everything. Like there was nothing really else to compete on. They had these kind of slight MLG tournaments that came on a little after, but game battles, like being at the top of the game battles ladder, was being the best.
Oh yeah.
So we're on a team with this guy called Corvette Mike. Oh man,
Mike,
shout out to the man.
Corvette Mike went on to play multiple games at MLG.
He was a professional Rainbow Six player before Call of Duty, and then he came to Call of Duty, and he never competed in an actual event, but he was the leader of the game battle scene that me and Will joined up on when we first started competing together. It's called EFX. To this day, we have a lot of good memories from that, but it's kind of funny to think about because Corvette Mike's kind of the guy who molded me into becoming like an in-game leader. He is very much that kind of person who would try and be a student, tell you what to do in the game, and try and help you to get better, and really almost yell at you in a way.
Yeah, he was annoying. Dude.
Yeah,
he
was very
crouching around the whole map the whole time. He was not a good.
He was not a good.
I mean, I
player.
love Corvette Mike. He was okay. He was good.
Yeah, he was good. He was good back in the day for sure.
Yeah, I don't think running SMG these days, but he had a play style, that's for sure.
He was not getting sounded by anyone, that's for sure. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And then we went from there. Will actually started playing these online tournaments with them because I was Canadian back then, so I wasn't allowed to compete in anything.
The Montreal kids not allowed to party.
Yeah. So it was Big T. I think it was you, Nate, Zeschlag, and Mike, right? You guys started playing online tournaments.
Yep, that was like late 07 or early 08, something like that. It was the what did they call them? The MLG tournament, MLG B. It was the first ever MLG Call of Duty tournament.
We were like, we got throw money at this.
Sixth.
Right. So kind of skipping through a little bit, Will started playing Halo more.
Okay.
And I had a moment where I wasn't able to play because I was busy with school and whatnot. So we didn't really play for, I'd say, the second half of 08. And then we actually saw, I watched, and I'm pretty sure Will watched as well, the 2008 National Championship where Fear beat Envy in the finals. Yeah. Which was like the first, like, because I mean, I watched MLG on TV when you were casting and that Halo 2 phenomenon of like on USA. I was traveling the United States for bowling tournaments. I was seeing that, like, this is awesome. Like, this is so cool. All these guys are getting to make this crazy money playing video games, and all these people are kind of watching live. And that was the awesomeness of it. But we didn't really have that in Call of Duty. And then when I finally saw that was there, I was like, oh shit, like that's my calling. Like I gotta give this a try.
Yeah, I must have stopped playing in 2008 because I remember just hearing about it. I think you hit me up or something, and you were like, "Dude, did you see there's Call of Duty like at an actual live event?" I was like, "What,
bro?"
We
go to a place and play it for
that was like
$500.
Will was trying to make it big in Halo back then because he was interested in the game. Kind of
trying. I was like, I was level 33, I think, in the MLG playlist.
I was quite offended that I didn't remember calling him to stations in Halo 2. I was like, sorry, bro. I read a lot of names back then. Big Timer didn't stand out like Dragon Slayer 6969.
Wait, wasn't there another Big Timer?
There was. Yeah. I still get mistaken for that.
He
guy.
wasn't as good though. Wasn't as good. Yeah. Let's fast forward to the COD 4 National Championship with Extravagant. That was basically a decade ago. It was November of 2009, and you guys walked away with $8,000 whole dollars, which was unheard of.
Racks.
Unheard of for the Call of Duty.
We were playing online for the whole year because back then, for people just quickly, like they were all online tournaments that made you qualify for the national championship. So we went through and like I think we won one and got second in a couple or whatever. We made it through a couple of finals. So I think we were the second seed going to the actual national championship.
No, we were first seed. I remember that.
We were first seed. Okay, never mind.
First seed.
But we were playing with Mini Wheats, which is a player that doesn't play anymore, but he played for a long time. And then Sharp, which I'm sure a lot of people know, he doesn't compete anymore, but he's also an OG. But Sharp wasn't actually supposed to be at that event. It was supposed to be me, Dodgers, this 13-year-old kid, because back then there was no rules on ages, which is another funny story.
Yo, Dodgers.
And then, dude, he was so good. He was honestly like amazing for his age. He's probably one of the smartest, if not the smartest player in the game. And he was 13 years old, which is crazy. It's like shocking. But Mini Wheats couldn't travel the event for us, so we had to kind of pick up a last-minute player. And then we saw Sharp was available, and he was able to travel. And Sharp was 15 at the time, so it was me being I think 19. Will, you were 18 if I'm correct.
Yeah, something like that.
and then Sharp was 15, and Dodger was 13. So our average team age was like 15 and a half or something.
Now, Rebel, were you like playing from the United States? How did you get around the whole Canadian issue at that point?
So the rules for online for the MLG stuff, it was only for GB you couldn't play online tournaments. For MLG, it was different, which technically probably honestly wasn't legal in capacity, but I got away with it back then, so I was able to qualify and travel to the actual event. So I was living in Montreal. I lived in Montreal for my first 22 years of my life, and the funniest story is that back then the money, obviously, like you said, we won $8,000 as a team. So I'm Canadian. So for those who don't know, when you're Canadian, you travel to the United States to play video games. For the most part, it's still considered gambling, so you have to give up 30% of your earnings.
Oh.
On top of that, there was a 9%
taxes on top of the 30%.
No, those are basically those are just tax. Yeah, basically
Okay.
I do twice. So I pay taxes in the States based on that, and then I got to pay taxes in Canada. So yeah, it was got the shit out of the stick. Anyways, so the sponsors obviously aren't that big. We got lucky to get Ego from 360 Icons to give us like a sponsorship. So our team name was just 360 Icon or Extravagant Icons based on that 360 Icon thing. So we traveled the event, so he pays for our hotel, which is great. But they announced the event like 3 or 4 weeks before it actually happened. So flying from Canada to the United States is not cheap. My flight was $900.
No.
So we win the tournament. I get a check for $1,236.
You paid for your flight.
After my basically, which I paid for my own money for my flight. So after my personal expenses, cabs, and food, I basically broke even with my first ever tournament.
Well done. So first place at the national championship or world championship at that time, and you barely break even. Will, what did you do with your $1,236?
No, he got the 2K.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I ended up with like 1,800 or something like that.
All right,
I want to say, who was this? 2010. I think I might have paid for a couple months' rent because shortly afterwards I went and got my first apartment. It was either that or I bought like a couch or something.
Definitely a huge life investment either way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't invest it or anything or do anything smart.
I think you need to tell the story about Mama Will and her thing. What she thought about you going to the event.
Well, yeah, she wasn't happy about it. Because speaking of like Battlefield 2, I used to tell her all the time. Because in Battlefield 2, there was also each year they would have like a PlayStation versus Xbox, like 8v8, and everybody flies out. And it was in California, and I'd tell her like I was a beast at Battlefield, okay, and I was like, I'm going to California, and that's gonna be it. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna be the best. And she was always like, yeah. So when I finally told her for real, like, hey, I'm going to California, like Anaheim, in like 3 weeks. I was like, what do you think about it? She was like, not much. I was like, what do you mean, not much? So I had to get her on the phone with Ego, and he had to explain to her like what this was, that no one was going to take me like in an alley and beat the hell out of me.
Pretty sure
if anyone's going to take you in an alley, I feel like Ego would be the ideal.
I was going to say, I was so glad she didn't know what he looked like. I was like, just talk to him on the phone and it'll be fine. Just don't.
I'm pretty sure I spoke to her as well over the mic.
You did.
I'm pretty sure I did.
We're just kidding, Ego. Much love, brother.
Yeah, we love Ego. Ego's the man.
Finally convinced her. So
we showed up to the tournament and win it. It was crazy too, the experience.
What did Mom say when you came back a champion, Will?
She really didn't know what to think. I slapped that check down on the... Oh wait, did I do that? No, I think
no.
No, they came like
I think they
90
sent
days
it in the
after.
mail or something.
You were good.
Yeah. No, she was excited. I think it was a couple years later after that COD XP event that she was really like, "Oh shit, okay, like, you can do this."
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that one.
Oh, sorry, Ray. Ray, what happened at that one, by the way? Will won $1 million, and you...
I was Canadian. I was Canadian from Quebec. All right, not just Canadian. I was Canadian from Quebec. I was from the wrong part of Canada, and I couldn't go. I helped them qualify.
That was a gambling thing too.
Yeah, I helped them qualify, and then basically it just couldn't go compete the event from because of where I was. It's some dumb rule too. It's like our lottery, like we have a lottery business that basically wants X at like 10% of the total prize pool per day. They run an event if it's considered like an element of chance.
But is that still a thing today or no?
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
I think it's been worked around since then. At least my Twitter stopped getting spammed daily by the kids in Montreal. I think
if it's still considered a contest, I think there's still probably some element issues. But yeah, no, it sucked. I couldn't go compete the event because then they won. I just watched my guys won 100K. And then I got dropped from the team a little bit after that. Just all the injuries.
Even worse. Before we get to that, let's talk about 2010 because this is when you guys matched up with a very familiar name to anyone who's been watching Call of Duty. He has 2 world titles to his name right now. JCap was on your roster throughout most of 2010. What was it like, though, in 2010? Because I remember we went from, like, that LAN event, we had the national championships, and then didn't we just send you straight back to online play?
Well, the reasoning is that there wasn't LAN support, right? The Modern Warfare 2 didn't have local air support, so they had all this talk. Like, we spoke to, I think it was Sundance we spoke to at the actual event. They were talking about how cool it was to have Call of Duty there, and then they're looking forward to doing events next year. We were so psyched about it, especially after you won the tournament. We're like, oh, this is awesome! We're gonna make so much money next year. This is dope. And then they announced the game, and then we see that there's no LAN event. And MLG's like, yeah, we're not doing that. Like, the online events are just such a pain in the butt to run. So it just didn't happen. So yeah, we were straight back to PCLs. Just the nice thing about that year is that we had an Xbox event and a PS4 or PS was it? Yeah, it was Xbox 360 and then PS3 event. So we had two different ladders to compete on. So it's kind of double the money for us, which is kind of cool. But yeah, we're just playing online all year. Same thing. Qualified for national championship. Showed up and played and competed and didn't win that one. And yeah, it was. It's not as nice as we thought it would be.
We lost that one, didn't we?
I was looking at the brackets, and my favorite part of this was I was looking at all the old teams that you played. In the 2010 National Championship, you guys played against AOX, who featured Clayster and Croster. You played Leverage, which was Aches and TP. And thinking back, and of course you had JCap on your team back then. So are any other players, were they around in 2010 that are still playing, or was it really just that group of four? So I guess TP's out, so it'd just be Clayster, Aches, and JCap, right?
So this is something not a lot of people know, but Silly actually played 09 Nats.
Yeah, he did.
Silly he was tiniest, skinniest kid, and I saw him again like 5 years old. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? This guy's big. This guy's tall as hell now. But no, we literally, I never even met the guy or spoke to the guy online, and he just showed up to the event and like, oh, who is this guy? Yeah, and then what do you know? He's still competing this day. I think he's got to be one of the longest lasting players.
Yeah, him you can't even say, was Nameless playing then?
He didn't compete at events.
At this point. No, you're right.
He was playing online, but he never showed up to events. I mean, if you count online, but I'm just speaking of like actual live events. Like Silly was at 09 Nats. This is 10 years ago, and the guy's still there going strong. What a guy!
What a guy!
Is he
right?
the only one then?
Sorry.
He might be the only guy from 2009 Call of Duty Nats.
I mean, Aches is still if we count 2010, Aches is still playing.
Aches, yeah.
Clayster's still playing, but Clayster was kind of on and off at the start though.
Okay.
Because he didn't compete much after. Well, actually, no, he was on and off in Black Ops 1 events. I remember seeing him at events, but he wasn't like on pro teams or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's going through it with whatever teams he could get.
There's not many left, man. There's not
many left.
They're getting picked off one by one.
We'll get back to that in a minute. Just keep that in the back of your mind, guys. How few people have been around since then. Tell me about how Optic and Envy blew up, though, because I feel like that was kind of the new chapter for me as a Halo broadcaster and someone working on StarCraft. When I looked at Call of Duty and I saw Optic and Envy kind of taking over every conversation, every tournament discussion, everyone was just talking about these two teams. When did Optic and Envy really just blow up in the scene, and how did you guys become a part of it?
So, I can speak for Envy. So Envy was basically one of the earliest, best team in the game, right? It was them and Fear for the most part. Whenever Call of Duty started picking up on the MLG front, they were the two dominating teams online. They won. They went to the finals at 08 Nats. Envy also went to the finals at 09 Nats, and they were just kind of like the dynasty. Like everyone looked at Stainville, Foreplay. Hastro was playing back then. A lot of people forget that. And Fierce were like the main guys and those guys all live in a house together, which is something that, like, as players, we were like, oh, what? Like, these guys live and play together? Like, that I mean, it was kind of back then, it was like foreign because you're like, nobody really takes it that serious because it's not.
It was
that
also
big
kind of secretive, too. Like, we had heard they lived together, but at the same time, if Envy was online, like, they never had their mics plugged in. They always blocked, like, their friends list. Like, you didn't really know what was
always
going on.
Appearing offline.
They were
always appearing offline.
It was
really strange.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're real people. I don't.
But yeah, and I think it just really made it big based on their kind of success. Like Optic's a little different because they had success and they also had the big YouTube channels and all that stuff. But Envy was just purely off playing because they'd never been that big on content, especially the old players. Like never did any content really back then. So I think that's the biggest difference. Like Optic
what took you to Optic Gaming, and then Ray, same question about what took you to Envious later. Let's start though with Will and Optic because this was a decision you guys made twice.
Yeah. It was twice. Initially, and Ray might have to help me on this, it was right after. I remember talking after the MW2 National Championship. We were having conversations. I remember walking with Joe, and we were having conversations like, yo, we need to team, we need to get on Optic. And something happened where there was like 2 situations where we got sketched on by Sid Rock and JCap, and then we turn around and like replace them on Optic like a couple months later?
Something weird like that. So I mean,
something.
so me and Big T team with Merc early in the Modern Warfare 2 season, and we love that kid. Like, that kid was really cool to us, and we never had issues with him. We just weren't really kind of being successful at the time, and we were only playing with him on one of the 2 consoles. And I think that's the time where we picked up JCap. I think it was right after that.
Yeah.
But when we met Merc, we hit it off. Like, honestly, at the event, it was like me, JCap, and Merc for the most part hanging out for the entire event, from what I can recall. And yeah, we hit it off. So when after the event, kind of what Will was describing, we got sketched on. But then we spoke because we were really cool with Merc. It was kind of like the frenzy team thing back then. And we're like, yeah, you should play with us instead. We're way better than these guys. And then, yeah, it kind of happened that way.
Yeah, so I don't know where JCap and Sid Rock went after that, but initially that's how we got on Optic. And then from there, I don't know. My memory's fuzzy from all
good,
these
man.
days.
It's tough to go all the way back. Ray, you ended up, though, going to Envy, and if you looked at kind of your career, it seemed your competitive days ended with Envy. Not as a player, though. You took on a position as a coach for a little bit before going and working for the studio. So kind of walk me through those transitions.
Oh boy, that's some bad times, man. So fast forwarding, I was on Optic for a while. I got dropped once, and then for 2 events, I did in Black Ops 1. They won the first event, they dropped me in, and then they ended up getting, I think, 3rd or 4th at the national championship. Will Black Ops 1?
Black Ops 1, yeah, I think we got 3rd.
Yeah, actually, we played you guys that event, and we got our asses kicked. It was pretty. But I made basically a team from scraps. I teamed with Karma, which a lot of people probably didn't know.
It was like you, Karma,
Revan, and Bobby. Oh god, that Bobby guy. Remember Bobby?
Yeah, I do remember.
Oh my god, I have a story for a different episode for that guy.
Okay.
It's a little darker. Anyways, I teamed with those guys, and then Modern Warfare 3 stars, and then we don't have LAN support. Well, we had Black Ops 1 LAN support, and then next year it's back to kind of like the online stuff, and the European scene announces that they're going to run events. We're like, okay, well, there's still something to play. So I'm interested in playing. And then I guess JCap wasn't really committed to what was going on. And then the Optic guys at the time I think it was still the same team with Proof. You guys ended up replacing Proof with Scump, and then JCap getting replaced by me. And then we ended up traveling Europe and just dominating for basically the full year until the last event. Then the coldness, another story for another event. Another
we
podcast.
did under a different org, but yeah, we just had to leave Optic momentarily.
Right.
By the way, I'm writing down at the bottom of our script here, stories with Rambo for future events. Bobby question mark.
Unlike Will, I still have all my memories. So
yeah, I don't know. This is a long time ago. I mean, I do remember complaining about his hands being cold.
Oh yeah, 100%. That event was. We should talk about specific events, old events back then. I'm sure there's a lot of funny stories for people to. Because now it's like different, right? Like there's so much kind of money into it, and the preparation and production value of these events is like these guys are pampered. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They're not opening up garage doors when it's 0 degrees outside. Scump's over here crying like, I can't feel my hands. I'm like, dude, we'll beat them 3v4. Just shut the hell up and call out. Just tell me where they're at.
For anyone who wants to know Scump's kryptonite when he plays, is put a little AC unit next to him, and he's.
Oh, dude, just blow a fan on his hand. You'll fucking smoke him.
That's a good note right there.
But yeah, so fast forward, I get dropped. So I picked up again, and then Black Ops 2 comes out, and I'm still on Optic at the time, and then they announced they have the Frat Cup online, and we're kind of back to the areas where I can't compete again because of where I'm from. And we kind of hear between the ropes that there's going to be a Call of Duty Championship event, like the first COD Champs after XP, and they give us a rough estimate of when it is, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll be able to move by then. But then all the Nate Shot stuff happened, where Nate Shot got on the team. They thought it was a good idea. I guess it was since they won the first event. They didn't win after that for a while. Another story for another time. I'm still a little salty about that. I'm still a little salty. Last event you won, really?
That's the last one.
UMG Chicago, really?
UMG Chicago, that was it, man.
The auto rifle.
At Nade Shot. Okay, keep going.
No, not Nade Shot. It wasn't really Nade Shot, honestly. It was kind of a little bit. Anyways, so I get dropped from that team, so I'm like, okay, well, I got to find a new team because like this year's gonna be a big year for us. They have LAN again. We know Treyarch's gonna do LAN again because they did LAN in the past. So they announced COD Champs, and as soon as they announced COD Champs, I'm like, I know I'm gonna get screwed again So I moved 2 hours west to Ottawa, which is a different province where they don't have those restrictions.
Okay.
And then I start scrimming with different teams, and I scrim with Envy. After one event, I played with Parasite, Clayster, and Jake. Anyways, it was a UMG event that we're having in between everything else. So they announced COD Champs, like, I got to be in this, like, I got to play this. So I'm battling with Censor for a spot on the Envy team.
Ooh.
The team at the time is JCap, Proof, and Stainville.
Okay.
So I play some games with him. I'm scrimming with random people. I was playing with Fizzerp and some other guys. And we're just scrimming different teams. I was shitting on you guys, Will, for
Ooh, I don't remember that, but okay.
Totally destroying the ground you guys in scrims. So I get my rep goes up a little bit. So Envy's like, yeah, let's do it. And then as soon as we started playing, it kind of clicked, and we got a good event. We should definitely talk about Black Ops 2 champs in a different channel as well if you want to put a note on that.
Yeah, Black Ops 2 longest losers bracket run in history.
No, that was the winners one. The year after that was the losers run.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And just to kind of skip forward, if we're just talking about the general aspects, we get second at COD champs. We don't do much for the rest. We don't do much for the rest of the year. They ban like dual pistols, and I'm screwed because I was a dual pistol guy. I couldn't shoot word shit for the rest of the game, and JCap wasn't good either at Hank Creek.
Oh, B-23's don't work no more.
Yeah, B-23's go. It was a rough end of the year.
Ray would just run around with a flag, just dual pistoling people.
Yeah.
I just remember standoff so purely. Little Rambo Ray running through the house, little zinger with the pistols.
Go kill me close range. Throw smoke and walk in, baby. Let's go.
So let's fast forward to the end here because.
Yeah. Sorry. So I get dropped from Envy early the Ghost season. And then some stuff happens. I'm back on the team for COD Champs. We pick up Steady and Nameless. We get second at Champs again. We have the craziest loser bracket run ever, where we were not even expected to make Champs at that time. We get crazy tiff. 2 weeks later, they're like, "We want you off the team. We're not going to move with you." And then I was like, "Okay, well." At that point, I was sad, and I was like, so the coaching thing, kind of answer your question earlier, is more because the visa situation I had.
Okay.
Because I'm Canadian, I was living at the Envy house for about a year at that point. I couldn't just really go and play for another team right away. It would require some legal stuff and changes, and it wasn't instant. And with how fast the COD scene moves and how people kind of drop each other, it was kind of like a rough time for me. I wasn't really looking forward to going through that, and also I didn't know how long it would last, and is it even worth all the money and time investment in doing it? And that's about the time where I got approached to work at Sledgehammer.
So you got second in 2013 and 2014 champs?
Sir.
Wow.
Ray made money, Will. Ray was cashing in on those $1 million events. He missed that first one, but he got a few second places. What was second place back then? Was it 200,000?
50. It's 50. Yeah, 200 for the team and 50 each.
50 each.
50 each, yeah. Minus the taxes again.
Oh,
man, it's such a killer seeing you win 50K and then you get a 30 grand check in the mail. You're like,
I got half of what I earned. I deserve this.
To be fair, you can get some of it. Like, I got about half of what I lost for 2 years back, but it's still like, it's kicking the balls, and you see that check coming in, you're like, oh.
That is brutal. So, talk us through the decision to join the dark side, and I say the dark side because they barely come out in the light. You're working crazy hours. You're not allowed to tell anyone what you're working on. I knew Ray really well, guys, and he would never leak anything to me. Mr. X and I would be texting him all the time, like, Ray, what's going on with the new game? Nope. Ray, what can you tell us? What do we need to know? Nothing. So what was it like working on the developer end? What took you that route?
So it comes to a point you're playing, and just kind of give perspective, I was the oldest. I mean, I was only older than to Will by a year or two, but I was the oldest in the scene by like 3 or 4 years for most people, right? And there's like a common conception, which I think is completely wrong based on what Counter-Strike players are doing when they're playing well into their 30s, that people were considered old. And that was kind of hurting me. It would have hurt my ability to find a team that I wanted to play with. And the only players I was really interested in playing were like Will, Scump, Merc, like the guys I've teamed with before, JCap, the guys I've teamed with before that I knew I was going to get success with, that were willing to play at the level I was at, and kind of, because a lot of the players are just kind of like think kills are everything, and it's kind of changed now but back then the majority of team style was just about slaying, and it wasn't really about kind of map positioning and understanding. It was kind of changing a little bit, but my perspective on the game was very much like, it's a team game. What I do on the map, sure as hell not going to give me stats, but it's going to help everyone else kind of do what they need to do and help our team win games. I knew I was going to have a hard time finding that, so I was kind of looking at outside, like, what can I do? Okay. And Jay Prier, which is one person that you know and that most people should know, he kind of works in the shadows as well, but he works for Activision and Treyarch, and he's probably one of the biggest pioneers behind scenes of what esports is for Call of Duty. He's one of the guys that pushed for Black Ops 1 to have, with Von Hart that pushed for the LAN or the local airplay stuff to work. He's one of the guys that pushed for champs to happen. He's the one that organizes a bunch of stuff that happens. Like, this guy literally does it all for us, and he should get a big shout out for anyone out there. And he actually, he spoke to me. He's like, "Hey, dude, there's this new upcoming studio that's gonna be working on Call of Duty. Would you be interested in coming to help them out ship their game?" So I'm like, "Oh, this is kind of sick. Like, this is new." And at the time he spoke to me, it was more about like a consultant job where I would go there and work for them for like the 3 or 4 months before they ship and help them out. And that's at the time the game was AW, which I can talk about now, obviously. And it was kind of like when I first got there, Michael Conji was the studio head at the time, and we had small discussions online before I got there. But the talk was like, "Hey, look, like the talk from now on, or from this point on, has been, this is a consulting job, but we're looking to hire you full time if you like it and if we feel like you're helping us out, right?" Because I mean, who didn't know this pro player guy who has no idea how to make a game or what goes on behind the scenes is coming in, like, he could be a total bust, but also it could be real helpful to help us ship the game. So basically the 4 months was me breaking down the game and showing my worth as far as like my intellect, like teaching him routes and teaching him how people think about certain things on the map, how weapons tuning all affect the high level of play, and how most of this stuff doesn't really hinder the casual experience. It's just more kind of giving that a skill gap for people to understand and play the game at a higher level. Right. And kind of like, long story short, things worked out. 4 months later, I'm here getting hired for Activision or for Sledgehammer Games, and then I've been here for 5.5 years up until today, which was my last day, which is a little sad, but yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Can we talk about that, Ray? Why is today the last day at Sledgehammer? What's going on?
So basically, I can give the reasoning from a standpoint. Like, the main reasoning is really the cost of life in the Bay Area is extremely expensive. Me and my fiance Melanie are trying to buy a house. Really, we want to have a family and buy a house, and we just feel like we can't do that out here. For those who don't know about the Bay Area, it's about, I don't know. I mean, California
buy a house out there. Don't even think.
California in general is expensive, but the Bay Area is like 5-6 times more expensive than kind of any other area in the States for the most part, besides maybe New York and the big cities.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you can look it up. There's like, I actually saw on TV not too long ago, like San Jose, which is south in the Bay Area. There's like San Francisco, San Jose south, and Oakland east. Right, 3 big cities in the area, and San Jose is the most expensive place to buy a house in the United States.
Ray, did you know that the Bay Area has a median house price of $996,000? So it's probably a good place to not spend all of your money on
so
one
your
house.
Money just really doesn't go anywhere out here, and we're to a point where we want to do different things, right? So it's like, again, my leaving with Sledgehammer has absolutely nothing to do. I have nothing to do with what they're doing there or how the team is or anything that's kind of my work there. I have nothing but good things to say about that team and what they do, and they're super, literally, like, people give these people such a hard time, and people really have a lack of understanding, and that's one of the things I'm going to try and do outside of that place, is really try and proactively shout out different things that these people do and what they have to go through to make certain things process, kind of teach people the process, basically, because there's just a lot of things that people don't understand, and to a certain extent it's like there's some politics and whatever you want to call it. But people really give these guys a lot too much shit, and they don't deserve it. Like, they're
think of some of just the smallest things that even you and I used to complain about.
Oh, dude, straight up.
I mean, you just don't even think about the amount of time and resources that go into building the whole game. Like, and we're talking about just a small, like, ooh, he's got Peeker's advantage.
Yeah,
Call me like a millisecond too fast.
And it's funny because exactly kind of what you're speaking of. Like, me and you used to be people that were proactively saying, like, what is this? Like, you can't do this. Give us land. It can't be that hard. Just you do online stuff. Like, just give us land. It's really easy. Like, you're screwing our lives here by not giving us land.
Just make a lobby. Type it in the code.
Right, now that you're gone, are you able to shine a light on what you did while you were there? Is there anything that you look back now and are super proud of accomplishing?
I don't know if it's really. I don't want to speak of anything I can't speak of. Obviously.
Okay.
My actual title there was competitive system designer. So, kind of speaking a little bit like the designer role, there's a lot of different kinds of people who do different things. There's engineers that do the coding. There's artists that art the games. There's rendering people that help. There's network people. There's like everything you can think of. Like, if you break down a game that you see and many things that you think are basically a thing about a game, there's someone doing it. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're like, a lot of people like point at the head guy. Like, for example, people point at Halon, who's the studio head now, and be like, oh, like, do this. Like, but he's basically the top guy who's overseeing kind of making everything that rolls and make sure there's no gums in the work and everyone has what they need to do their job to their fullest.
Yeah.
So it's specifically, I helped a lot on different things. Mostly balancing, I'd say, is kind of my biggest impact on the game. World War II specifically was the game I was a part of from start to finish. I helped a little bit with AW before they shipped and helped some tuning there. But like weapon balancing, trying to help out with certain maps, and basically my daily job would be like play the game, give feedback, do my own things on weapons. I would hook up weapons to the game, so like the artist would make the weapon, and then I would basically attach it to whatever needs to be attached to in the game. There's like files you have to put it in, you have to attach it to code, and a bunch of stuff that basically people don't see, just to make it work. And then I would try and tune it to my best and have feedback around the studio, and then try and change things to make the game as best as possible. And it's also not easy, because like when things go live, this is one thing I want to advocate right away, is that there is a million people playing the game that have different eyes on it. When you're in studio, there's like the 150, 200 people that are playing the game on a daily basis that have your eyes. So it's really hard to kind of get a perspective on all the things that are going on. And that's kind of why, like, when they have betas, it's really useful, because they get a lot of feedback they didn't get before. They have a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes that people from the outside come and try the game and give their feedback. Anyways, I don't want to go too far. I don't know exactly to what extent.
You're good.
But I think what I'm saying is fine. So, but yeah, it's a crazy world, and honestly, it's an experience I wouldn't give up for anything in the world. I think from a standpoint of getting dropped, it sucked at the time, but in my eyes, it worked out. I got to experience something new, and do something else in playing. And playing is great and all, but I think Will can speak to this, like the practice and elements of it's basically a life, like it's a lifestyle. Competing
I was
at
going
the
to
highest
say,
level.
just listen to you explain that.
Future episode. For now, we won't pry
Okay,
too much further.
Okay, that's fair.
Sorry to cut you off there, Will.
No, you're good.
Ray, the final question here I had on the topic is, would you, now that you've experienced life as a designer, working in the studio, would you ever want to see yourself working on a game full-time again in the future? Or do you prefer being on the other side of it as a competitor, and the other ways to approach gaming outside of actually building one?
I think if the right circumstances were there, I think I probably would. I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but like from a standpoint of like if I were in a position where I can have a bigger role or a bigger say, because like there's different voices, and when you make a game, and ultimately there's like the top guys making the decisions, right? So, and it's one thing to know how to make games and grow into that business, but being the shot caller and kind of be able to make the big decisions is kind of what a designer wants to do, I guess. That's kind of the pinnacle of the role, is to be a lead designer, right? So if the circumstances are right in the future, like again, I loved what I did, and I would do it all over again. I think it's their perspective. It's kind of like when I played, like if you told me I would play all over again, I would for some reasons, but I would hate it for the other reasons. So just like any job, there's pros and cons. Yeah, that's a good way to answer
a pretty
the question.
sweet job, man. You just can't buy a $2 million home.
Yeah, no, I mean,
let's go.
It's honestly like, I think the worst part about it is not kind of what Pucky was explaining earlier. You can't talk about what you do.
Right.
Like, and for me, as like kind of what you're saying, like we're personalities, we're outspoken on the community level. We were competitors and casters, and part of our job doing that is to stay connected with the outside world and talk to these people constantly and interact on a daily basis. And I couldn't do that there. And I mean, that's something that was the hardest thing to get used to. And especially when I started, it was like asked of me to like try and not be as like vocal outside, because it's going to make it hard on yourself, because you're going to feel like you want to talk about things and you can't. So that's probably the hardest thing.
Anytime I text you something, you just be like, "Nope, can't tell you."
Sorry,
I was like, "Bro, come on,
got nothing.
Like,
and
tell
it's
me."
Like, are they
and even now that I'm there,
shit, and you're like, I can't tell you yes, can't tell you yes. It's definitely gonna have jetpacks.
I was even asking him stuff like last month. I was like, "Dude, just tell me. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not gonna tell you." Like, I'm not telling you.
It's like you're basically it's respectful, and you sign an NDA, and it would get you in trouble to speak of anything anyway. So it's
you're
not
a man of your word.
You're a good
yeah,
man,
100%.
right?
And if anything, I would tell you, I'll tell you, but I'll have to kill you, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So it doesn't trail back.
I can't wait to hear more stories throughout this, and as we see issues popping up across the year, would love to get your dev side feedback of what you think might be going on. I think one of the topics we have to cover is this weekend in Atlanta. They don't know if it's going to be LAN ready or if things are going to be played online. Has there been any more recent news? Have you guys seen anything on Reddit? Because the last I heard was it's up in the air.
I've heard different things. One of them, which I can't speak of, sadly.
Here we go, dude. Here we go.
Yeah. There might be a lot of my answers. I'll just tease you guys. Like, yeah, you know, but I can't say. Sorry.
Ray's NDA is gonna be up eventually. We'll get the real answer.
No, it's not. I think it's until the day I die.
Will, as a former player, what's the difference between LAN and online?
Oh, I mean, look, when you're playing at the highest level, I mean, I was joking earlier about the, 1 millisecond response time, or like, somebody gets a peeker's advantage. When you're playing something at the highest level, that stuff really does play a role. And I mean, the difference in playing in LAN and online, I haven't played Modern Warfare on LAN, so I'm not sure, but if it's anything like COD 4, Modern Warfare 2, the game just has a different fluidity to it. The movement, the shooting, even the recoil, and because of that, like, you have to play a little bit differently. You might take routes that you didn't normally take. You may be better suited as like an SMG player, an AR player. There's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, I can play online, and if I'm hosting from Arkansas, I'm going to be a completely different animal than I am going to be on land.
Like he was back in the day.
Oh yeah, man, Modern Warfare 2.
I kind of add a point to that though. Like what you were talking about earlier, like the cameras, for example. That's probably the biggest difference from what I've seen playing on LAN and online. Like the camera, there's like a peeker's advantage because I don't know exactly what the reasoning is behind that. Even because
you're hosting online, you mean?
No, but just playing online. Like if you're host, you have you kind of have the LAN feel a little bit.
Yeah.
But the camera is online. Like if I jump around a corner, the peeker's advantage is stronger online because of the response time or whatever you have, the code difference, or I don't know exactly what to call it.
Right.
But on LAN, there's less of that. Like it's kind of the same thing back in the day when we competed. I felt like the game was a lot more position based when you played on LAN because it was harder to be more aggressive because that kind of difference in camera wasn't as strong.
If you could be more aggressive and you could just kind of joke people, like jump around a corner online. You get on land, like you're jumping around that corner, you're just getting smoked. Like,
you're dying most of the time. Because the difference in that person seeing you first isn't as strong. So holding down the position and pre-aiming something is actually stronger on land. It might be different from this game. Obviously, I haven't felt it, but I think that's the biggest difference.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to leave that topic there because I don't know what's going to happen, and they've got a day and a half to figure it out and let everyone else know what's going down. But as of now, I'd expect it to be on land, I guess.
To be fair though, we played like the COD 4 national event was online LAN.
Yeah.
Like we
we ran and honestly like out to all of your Xboxes, PlayStations at the time.
Xbox 360. Xbox 360.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, 360, good console.
That's right. Yeah, because we were using those for Halo 2, so you guys should probably just reuse our Halo 2 Xboxes for your Call of Duty.
Honestly, like I don't think the game will be that different if it's that, and everyone's playing on the same level, right? Because they're all playing from the same connection, so it should feel very. You would think it would feel similar to LAN, if anything.
Yeah, because it's online, but they're all still in the same spot. It's probably not going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I wouldn't think.
I am Nate in the chat says it was all still running data like LAN, local IPs just had to connect to Xbox Live. So that was way back in the day. I wonder what things are like on Saturday, and we'll let you get the players' opinions on the next episode. Let's move on though, because we got to touch on one of the biggest roster changes, a team that we will not see this weekend in Atlanta. The Seattle Surge have announced that Enable will not be in the starting lineup. At least that's kind of the discussion from his stream. He said, it was kind of a wake-up call for me. I realized I wasn't grinding the game the way I needed to, and he's willing to put in that time now. But now we see Enable, a guy who has won $1,873,000 for his teams. Is sitting on the bench.
That's a lot of money.
And a young guy named Pander, who's been a good friend of Octane for years now, is in the starting lineup. First of all, were you guys aware of this move at all, Will, before tonight's show?
I was.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to some people when I was in Chicago. So,
what were the instant reactions from you? Because we kind of talked on the show with Rich Campbell last week, and I said, this is insane. How do you take any of these names out of a starting lineup? And he's right. 1 week later, they've made some serious changes.
I mean, I'm not sure the reasoning behind going after Enable, like you said. I mean, he's an incredibly decorated player, not only in COD, but Halo as well. But I've been waiting on this moment. We've been talking about this for like 4 or 5 podcasts. I've been waiting to see how teams are going to utilize the subs and if any moves were going to be made, because these dudes are just sitting there taking up salary cap. So now we're finally going to get to see, like, is it just a one event thing? Are they going to try it? Maybe they'll sub Enable in on certain maps. I don't know. I'm just kind of happy. I feel bad for Enable. Hopefully he can work his way back into the lineup, but I'm excited to see just kind of how this whole thing turns out, because I've been waiting for weeks.
Ray,
it's got to be.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's got to be a weird dynamic, like from a standpoint of like, because the original lineups, from my understanding, from what I heard from people, I haven't seen anything like in person yet, but the understanding was that the 5 players that are picked up on the main rosters I think the Toronto Ultra is the only team that picked up 10.
Yeah.
Where basically all these other teams are like, these are our 5 starters. We're picking up 2 extra players because we're forced to.
Right.
You had to have 7 players on your roster. That was mandatory for the league.
Yeah. Like if somebody gets deathly sick, like
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they just make sure they don't get screwed in a position. So I found it interesting. I was really thinking about that. It started kind of. I'm sure you guys talked about in previous episodes, but the mentality of like, are we going to have search and destroy specialists? Are we going to have like a sniper? Like,
right.
What if Homage got picked up? Like literally for a search map that's super snipe heavy. That'd be kind of sick. Like,
I don't think that's going to improve your team, Homage.
Nah, I don't think so. I love Homage.
All right, okay, fair enough. But no, but like, let's say if you had like a specialist that was just literally coming in to do specific things on specific maps. The only issue I saw with that was like, well, how are you supposed to practice? Like, this guy needs to be there for whatever 10 minutes a day when they practice for like 4 hours or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, that would kind of blow. Like, and I don't know how that kind of feels as well, because we've never done it in the past, right? All these people are just, you're scrimming with your team from start to finish during the day, and you learn things as a team, and you're not missing a beat. What if this guy isn't there for practice or anything, and you're trying to practice something and he doesn't see it, and vice versa? And does that affect the team dynamic, right? Because this guy's like, oh, I'm not good enough to play this specific mode. Why am I not good enough? Why is this guy better than me? You got me on your starting lineup for a reason, right? So it's interesting to see this happening for the first time. I have a hard time understanding why Enable. I mean, again, we don't know. I don't know the story. If you guys know more about the story, it'd be great to know. Or if someone in the chat knows what the reasoning is behind dropping Enable.
I think it's just performance based. I think it's purely looking at some of the numbers, and
that's so weird to me, though.
There's 3 players in a similar range, but Enable is one who's kind of been looked at over the last 3 years as he's off to a slow start.
And kind of to that, he kind of picks that up with time. But to me, Enable, like kind of like I did as a player, does more than just stats. And it's such a small sample size on what they've played so far.
Right.
And I'm not entirely sure who they played the first week, but I know they played Dallas twice last week, or the last event. And they kind of got swept, or they got beat pretty bad, if I remember correctly, most times. Or I think they had one close game, actually.
Yeah. I just think about it like this, though, and I'm like, Enable was in the last 2 grand finals of your world championships.
Right? Yeah.
He's been playing with Octane since October 2018.
Sounds familiar.
Ray, you've been in these shoes. What do you do if you're Enable now?
It's tough, and there's a different discussion to go off of this as well. Like, but for Enable, because he's going to keep playing 10s. Like, I've been watching a lot of the streams lately to try and get accustomed to the game a little more, and it's interesting because those guys get picked left and right, and they play their games, and it seems like those games are pretty competitive. So for him staying sharp, I don't think he's going to have an issue with that. I think it's just a matter of like, where's this team going with Panda? Like, what is this guy doing different that this team is appealed by? Is it just because they're just looking for a replacement for Enable because he hasn't been playing up to par? Or is it because this guy has something to offer that they feel like Enable didn't? And obviously it's a different game, so like I'd say this Call of Duty, out of all the previous Call of Duties, is probably the most different Call of Duty game we've had in a long time. And from a playing standpoint, and just because how the game's built and how the maps are, and the angles that you get, and the weaponry, and the time to kill, and the speed and how you have to move, and just the maps in general are just it doesn't care to kind of what you expect in a positional game. Right. It's very much a lot of like, I have to race around corners, be very aggressive nonstop. It's a very skill based individual game. And to be fair, most Call of Duty games when they start that way and kind of slow down with time as people learn the strategies. But I have a feeling that this game's going to be very different from that.
You think it's going to ramp up?
I think it is going to. Normally it takes like, Will can attest to this, but normally it would take us like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months to get to a place in the game where everyone's playing it the same. Yeah. I think this year is going to be longer than that. I think this year is actually going to go until the very last event or two, until you see teams kind of just be really repetitive in what they do, because these are the optimal strategies. Just because of the pure kind of variety and angles you have and all the variables you have in this game with smokes and stuns and just how they're used and how the maps cater to those kind of play styles. There's just so many kind of avenues for different scenarios to happen that it's going to take a while before people see the same stuff and know how to react to those same things.
You just have a lot of different choices as a player, right, and choosing which players are running stuns, which are running flashes, smokes. Yeah, it's a chaotic game sometimes, but it's organized chaos.
You get your gentleman's rules of how many smokes are we going to allow you to run and how many flashes are we going to allow you to use.
That's a discussion we need to have for a different episode.
Yeah, that gets tough. The chat was saying, it's a difference between 4v4 and 5v5 nowadays, and someone else countered immediately and said, well, Enable went to the grand finals in both settings, 4v4 in Black Ops 4 or in World War II, and then 5v5 last year. His skill set kind of reminds me of yours, Rambo, where you were much stronger in search and destroy, but he's the communicator. He can be kind of a shot caller at times, and definitely is going to be letting you know where everyone is on the map. Is this play style more beneficial in a 5v5, or do you just need a raw reaction time skilled player in this new format?
So I'll put it this way, and I think, again, Will can probably attest to this, but the team needs to play around a certain play style. And if that play style doesn't match what Enable's doing, then it's a good thing that they're switching. Just kind of like when I was playing and I got to the end of my competitive career, my team felt like we needed 4 players that are going to statistically be better than the other team. And at the time, the best team was Cole. So to beat Cole, you needed to outslay them for the most part because they were smart players and played the game at a very high level.
Right. Yeah.
So in that retrospect, it's fair. But like, for example, if I take my team with Big T, Merc, and JCap, for example, or Scump, I was always kind of the person who's baiting, right? I'll be first in line. I'll create chaos on their front line and make the enemy team move in different ways that allows me to see what's happening and then call out to my team, this is how we should approach the situation. And you got Scump, Big T, and Merc, 3 of the best gunfight players at the time, just come in and mop the field and just take the flag and run it back home. So, and that's a play style that still exists to this day, but you need the team to play around it. Okay. It only works if everyone's willing to play around that kind of play style. And I think Paris is one team that's playing that play style right now. With Kismet is like, everyone, like, I don't know if you saw the Nameless talk about it on the episode. What's that the episode called? The podcast they're having where they kind of talk trash to each other in some way, or they talk about a point. Anyways, I forgot what it's called. But Nameless was talking about how Kismet was basically this role type player on his team that is just opening up the map for Dens and Luca to just kind of kill everything. Like, those guys just don't have to do much. They can sit there, pre-emit ARs, and they'll just have literally gifts sent to them from Kismet opening to that. And that's a play style that I feel like Enable was kind of doing for the Surge. But it's something that didn't work out, maybe doesn't work out for them. And I don't want to bring this up, but when I teamed with Karma, we had similar issues. Karma didn't see the game that well, so it could be something similar. Okay. Again, this is me speaking outside the line without really knowing the true story. But when I teamed with Karma, it's not. He didn't really see. We never saw eye to eye on really how to play the game. I love Karma as a human. He's a good guy. But when it came to work and playing the game, we didn't really see it the same way.
Right.
And he sees it in a way that maybe doesn't match what Enable is doing, maybe for the same reasons.
So maybe they're just not all committing to the same type of strategy.
Right. And that hurts. Like, you need to be, like, well, I can attest to this again, but you need to be able to really play. If your team is not seeing the game the same way, you're not going to compete at a high level, period. No. I don't care how good you are. I don't care you got 5 octanes on the team. No. You will not beat another team that's on the same page.
Can we theory craft real quick? I'm going to pull up the standings just so you guys can visualize all of the teams. Where does Enable go if not the Surge? Because I feel like this is a name you won't see on the bench in the middle of the season. Let's take a look at our standings right now. The first team that jumped out to me was Optic Gaming LA. It's like, is there any chance that Enable goes back and plays with old teammates?
Go ahead, Will.
I have no idea on this one. Per the rules, is he able to just move around?
No, he needs to be traded. I think
there's player transaction periods that'll shut down 2/3 into the season before the finals.
So we should know for sure, but I think they would need to trade him.
Yeah.
Okay. Good Lord, I don't know. Optic needs some help. I know that.
Do you send him to Dallas and have more vets than youngsters? Is Dallas okay with the young lineup and the old guard of Crim and Clay?
I still think they're going to be okay. I mean, yeah, they ended up second last event, so they're still in the top 3. I wouldn't rush to any conclusions if I was Dallas. I don't know. Looking at these teams, yeah, I mean, you got to think somebody closer towards the bottom of the list might be wanting to make a change. But I think even Optic has they've had their shining moments, so they're probably going to give it a few more events.
I think if Enable goes anywhere, it's got to be New York. New York is a team full of young players that seem right now like they need guidance. They don't really have, like, I mean, what is it?
Accuracy's your captain.
Accuracy's the captain. I've never seen Accuracy as, like, kind of like a lead. Like, he's a good player and he's smart, but I wouldn't see him as, like, I'm going to listen to this guy nonstop playing. Right. And from what I've heard behind the ropes, it seems like this team's having a lot of arguments on how they practice.
Yep.
So they could probably use kind of that more veteran, kind of chill-minded like Enable is, because, like you said, he's a great communicator. He sees the game the way it should be played, and then he has a play style that would maybe cater to those kind of younger players that just like playing super aggressive. And if he can be leading front on that, then those players maybe shine a little more light right now. Because whatever they do, I think New York's probably, in my opinion, New York's probably one of the least competitive teams in the league right now.
Yeah, they look good against Paris to start things, and then they kind of crumbled for
Fell
the second
apart, yeah.
event in a row. I do like that Subliners pick quite a bit. For those of you who don't know, Accuracy and Enable played together on Team Caliber very recently. So I think you would see some immediate teamwork in just that duo, and then maybe he can help spread some comms across the rest of the squad. Let's jump into the Atlanta event, though. We showed you the standings. Here they are one more time before the event, and we should highlight that there are 4 teams not going to be in attendance here. This time, not going to Atlanta, we will have the LA Gorillas sitting out. They're currently still just at 10 points after struggling in London. The Subliners will not have a chance to earn any more points. The Dallas Empire will be sitting out, currently tied for 3rd place. And the Seattle Surge, who is also in that huge tie for 7th place, not participating. So you've got an opportunity to move up the rankings if you're a team like Optic LA. Minnesota could make some power moves. You could see Florida Mutineers making some moves this weekend. But let's talk about how we expect it to play out. Because looking at the groups, I got to ask guys, like, where's the strengths, where are the weaknesses? Because there's clearly one team on top for each of the groups for me. But then I don't know how things are going to play out.
I'd be extremely surprised if the finals. I'm just going to blandly say it that if Atlanta FaZe and Huntsman didn't play in the finals, I'd be really surprised. Honestly,
Let's go. That would be such an insane match to watch.
Just so far from what we've seen, these teams seem to be the proven teams to have an edge on everybody else. They just seem to be like that kind of small echelon above. I would put the Empire in that group as well. After the performance last event, but as it stands, those two, like, that seems like the juggernaut battle that's going to be seen, and I'm excited to see it. It's going to be sick.
Will you put the Empire in the same tier as the other two, Huntsman and ATL FaZe?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Nah, no chance. No way. No way. It's Huntsman for sure. But I was going to say, just the other day, I'm not sure if that was the first. I'm sure they've scrimmed more than that, but I heard FaZe went up 7-1 in scrims against Huntsman. That's a beating. That's pretty
good statement.
I heard some crazy stat that the FaZe team didn't lose like a map in like 65. They won like 65 maps in a row on scrims or something. Someone was keeping stats for that, which is like absolutely absurd.
65 maps in a row?
Can't not one of your guys like disconnect with 2 minutes left because of his mom pulled his internet out or something like that, and then you lose the game.
The more I hear about that
isn't hyping up any of this. The coach, Crowder, I should say, formerly known as Replays, Crowder isn't talking about any of the success recently. He's trying to downplay it. Good move, bad move. If it was me, knowing that I have a brand new team, I have Offset, Lil Yachty, and every celebrity FaZe member you could ever think of partying in my city, I would be bragging nonstop. What's your take on the way that FaZe is handling things up to this point?
Crowder is one of the most humble guys in the scene, to be honest. Yeah. I would never expect him to like just blatantly say like, "Oh, we're just better." Like everyone else sucks. Like we've been winning all the scrims, and even then, it's like I kind of like the mentality of like keeping it low. Like you don't need to like just let the games prove it. Like you're beating everyone. Why even saying anything past that's not going to help it. It's just going to add this like useless pressure to your players, especially if you're not a player. If you're a player and doing it, fine, that's on you. But if someone in your organization is talking shit for you, to me that's kind of like let's not do that.
Imagine if you're the guy winning and your coach is standing behind you just talking trash to everybody. Not everyone performs under that sort of.
You mean Mr. X with Cole?
Hey. Yeah, basically. Like, and that was a situation where it really worked. Like,
yeah, dude.
It was good. But
Mr. X.
They're focusing on the game. I think Ray and I were very similar in, if there were certain games or we were going through certain, tournament streaks where we were just dominating. It's not like I wasn't going to get up and talk trash to you. Like we were just going to beat you 250 to like 90, and then we were going to walk off and go get lunch. And that was it. Yeah, that was the move. So yeah, they're staying low key about it, but the more I hear about them, and the more I'm seeing their map counts against some of these teams, that's a scary squad, man. That's a scary squad. I think Group A for sure is going to have to go to the Atlanta FaZe. Group B, I got to agree. FaZe, Huntsman in the finals.
Let's look at this real quick, one by one. Atlanta FaZe versus Optic Gaming LA. So this is the first real match of the broadcast, I believe, that they're getting really hyped about. It's Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. This is Atlanta's first time playing after not performing in London. They're in front of their home crowd. They've only dropped one map, and that was a weird fluke domination to the New York Subliners. Other than that, they were 6-1 total, so pretty crushing. Is this a 3-0? Does Optic take them the distance? How strong is Optic LA?
I think the Vegas odds would say so.
Vegas odds are 3-0 phase for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to come out and steamroll, man. Again, the more I hear about some of these individual players and just how they mesh together as a team, I don't know. Like I said, Optic Gaming LA, they've had a few bright spots and maps that I've seen some glimmer of hope, but against a team like that, I don't know, man. Especially in Atlanta, I think 3-0 phase is going to be the outcome there.
Okay, second match here is actually the one that will be number 2 overall on Saturday. London Royal Ravens versus the Florida Mutineers.
I think it's gonna be a lot closer. London had a good event. Yeah, London had a good event. I mean, they were literally one map away from making the finals over Dallas. They got reverse swept in London, and they were hard crushed about that. But with the Bros and Dylan and all those players on that team are like playing really really hot Call of Duty right now, and the Mutineers. Honestly, like out of all the teams that are formed in the league, it just seems like the offset. Like how is this team formed? Like they're great players. Don't get me wrong, and it's just like it's this team molding and playing the way they're playing is like, is this going to last? Because they play pretty good so far. I mean, they've looked a lot better than everyone thought they would. So it'll be interesting, but I would have to give the edge to London just because of how they played in London.
Okay, so looking at the numbers here, London is 1-3 overall with their match record. They are 11-9 though when it comes to map count, so they're just getting some bad beats at times and they're not clutching up. 2-3 in Dom, 5-3 in Hardpoint. That's their best game mode, and then they're split 4-4 S&D. On the other side, you got Florida, who's only played 2 matches so far, so they're sitting at 1-1 after performing in Minnesota. And this squad, I don't know what to think about them because they're 5-5 after losing both of their dominations. They're 3-1 in Hardpoint. And they looked really good in their Game 5 Search and Destroy. Pristini and Havoc just seemed to know how to slip behind you. And I don't know if that was a first event thing or if this is going to be a consistent strength of this Mutineer squad. This one, for me, is the biggest toss-up of the entire weekend. And my gut is telling me to go to Florida. And I don't know why.
I tell you good, my man.
I don't know why this is going to go to Florida, but I feel like this is a big upset, and London just continues to crumble.
I mean, it's just looking at like Florida beat Seattle, the Surge, 3-2, and then they got beat by Ace and the LA Gorillas 3-2. Yeah. So they've had kind of 2 close games against some of the teams that you consider kind of bottoms here.
Right.
And London kind of made a good run and beat some of the good teams, and then also almost beat Dallas. So just based on that, I would like
just strength of schedule.
Taking gut aside, strength of schedule, yeah, I would have to give the edge.
Okay.
I've always been a logic guy. I have gut feelings, but normally our gut feelings kind of match the logic that goes on there.
Very rational man. Yeah, I'm going to go with London, too. I don't know if it'll be a 3-1 or 3-2, but London, I mean, yeah, they just, coming off that homestand, they got a little bit of experience in the tournament play now and the bracket play. I just haven't seen enough of the Mutineers yet to really make an informed decision. So I'm going to go 3-2 London.
3-2 London. I like it. Yep. Let's bring up our next one. This is going to be our Group B bracket. And here we've got Minnesota Rocker versus Paris Legion will be the very first match of the entire tournament. That's going down Saturday at 10 a.m. Minnesota, of course, one of 3 undefeated teams joining the Huntsmen and FaZe. They're currently sitting at 2-0 after they were gifted a win in sorts back in Minnesota against the Gorillas and then sealed that deal 3-1. But looking at this matchup, is Paris going to be the dominant team that we saw towards the second half of London, or do they struggle like they did against the Subliners? That's my only fear, because I think side by side, Paris Legion has to be the favorite here, right?
I mean, they have a bigger sample size, and if we want to go by that, sure. But the Rocker looked really good at the first event, and honestly, I feel like those players as a team just kind of have meshed really well. They have a great coach in Brian Saint, and I think they're going to be a tough team to beat. I think they're very underlooked. But Paris, kind of what you said, they look really strong in the second half of the event. All their players are popping off on all cylinders. But in my opinion, based on the play style, kind of we were talking about earlier with Paris, they just have too many big of X factors. It really seems like it's based on Kismet and their kind of their players that are playing more aggressive around the map to really open it up for their other players. And if those guys have bad maps, it's always hard as an AR to gain any kind of position and get any amount of kills in a map to win a game by slaying when your SMGs and your players up front aren't playing well. So if Paris SMG players and aggressors kind of come out playing really, really good, then I would expect them to beat, or at least have a good chance to beat Minnesota. But just based on what I've seen so far, I would have to give the edge to Minnesota, even though Paris had a really good event.
Have you seen our boy Weskins playing? He's killing it out there, man. He's an all-star.
He's in London, bro.
Yeah, that's the last one for London.
Oh, we're talking about Paris.
Paris, the Australians.
Don't get too excited.
Wrong spot.
Let's talk about Minnesota, though, because I want to hear the backup reasons of why people should be high on this team, because I think you got 2 very important wins to kick off your season, but you did it with the full crowd behind you, and you had a referee decision that totally turned the mood of your entire weekend in that first match against LA Guerrillas. So sell me on this Minnesota team. Why are you thinking that this is a squad that more people should be liking coming into Atlanta?
Again, I think it's just the vibes of their team aspect. This team from the start has been built around kind of team play. Their general understanding, and again with Brian, I have a lot of faith in his coaching ability for the teams he's done so far. I mean, he helped United go to their next levels, even though they had was it Facendo came in later last year with Black Ops 4. But still, I've had so many discussions with that guy, and he has such a kind of good game sense, and just the general vibe, like the aspects of how these guys treat each other and their ability to communicate and just really feel out the situations. And I haven't seen their practice regiment, but just from an outside perspective, I would expect it to be one of the best communicating teams to deal with issues out of all the teams in the league. I think there's obviously FaZe probably is very high up there, but they haven't really gone through like tough times yet because they're just killing everybody. And the same thing with the Huntsmen, they haven't really kind of had that roadblock. And from what I heard, Minnesota has not been as strong in scrims. So losing scrims is always a good thing, in my opinion. Okay. Will can attest to this when we played. But you learn a lot more from losing than you do winning.
Winning is teaching, losing is learning.
Hey, look at that.
What do you think about God RX? I was talking to some people in Chicago. They're thinking this kid's like one of, if not maybe the best player in the game individually.
These guys' skill level are very undermined. Like people kind of overlook these players. God RX is one of them. I think again, Silly's one player that's been playing forever, has such a general understanding of how to play the games, and he's able to kind of teach and help with the coaching as well, even though while he's playing. But just to kind of the general, God RX it's been around for a few years now, and he's had his moments where he's shined. He just never really seemed to have kind of the molding team around him to really help him shine. Yeah, and maybe this is it. Like we don't know yet. Again, the sample size is really small, and kind of what Puckett was explaining, they had kind of a free win, if you want to call it, or a free map that kind of changes the aspect of the game. Sure. But I still think they generally look really good at that event. And if they're able to build off those things and able to learn from their mistakes when they do scrim and be that kind of team I expect them to be, as far as like dealing with their issues and growing from it to a point that's maybe a little faster than other people, because if you lose scrims again, you should learn more. Then they should come out firing in these events and maybe get ahead of the meta and learning what the strategies are for all these maps that some of them honestly people don't really understand how to play yet.
So Ray's going Minnesota. I'm going Paris. Where are you going, Will?
I'm going to go Paris as well. I mean, I think it was it week 1? I think both you and I put Paris as the number 12 team in our power ranking. So if there's any team that's been overlooked so far, I think it's Paris, and they've looked solid so far. So need to see a little bit more out of Minnesota before I start hyping them up a little bit. I'm going to go Paris 3-1, 3-2. Somewhere around there.
It's going to be a close game, I think, though. I think it's going to be a really good series to start the week.
This is the first Game 5 search and destroy of the weekend. I mean, you're kicking things off at 10 a.m. Might as well go the distance.
I can see that.
That next matchup in Group B is going down in the afternoon. This is going to be Chicago Huntsmen versus Toronto at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Is this just like the FaZe match? Are we expecting Huntsmen to come in with a 3-0 and anything less is a disappointment?
Go ahead, Will.
Nail on the head on that one. Yep, they better steamroll them, baby. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be solid, man.
You can't come in to show bias like this, bro. Come on now.
Well, look, I said last week we
declared.
He's an
energy paid spokesman.
Look, 2 weeks ago, I came out and I said, until the snowball stops rolling in the Chicago Huntsmen favor, I'm going with them, and it's still rolling. It was still rolling at the last event, so I think they're solid, and they're getting along inside the game, outside the game. That team is vibing pretty well, so I would expect them to continue well together.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt in this match specifically that Huntsmen come out on top. I do want to say though, the Ultra have the singular aspect that they have a 10-man roster. I don't know if all those players move to Toronto. I think they have an advantage if that actually happened. because they can really scrim with each other and hide strategies if they figure things out first. And basically not show what they're working on would be an advantage that you have if you're able to figure out things that people don't expect, which can be we've seen in the past and early in the games can be a really big advantage.
I didn't think about that. You mean scrimming against each other 5v5?
Correct.
So
So
I don't know
that's,
how
that
often
could be
you
an
get a
advantage.
chance to. These guys have been on the road. It's like you're flying all over the place to play these games up to this point.
Right.
That's fair. I mean, they still have you should have a few days a week where you can put in some good scrims, I think.
Right.
And they're always trying to look sharp, anyways. But yeah, that's fair. But I think this is a team that has potential. They're not so far. I wouldn't say I'm that impressed with it, but they have players that have been around. Like Looney, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated players in the scene for the longest time. This guy has a very good understanding how to play games, and he's kind of been that like kind of what I used to do, where he coaches and helps his team understand what what routes and how to play certain scenarios, and he's a very good communicator at that as well. You got Metas, who's on Optic, who's a good player. Classic's been around forever as well. Bance is, in my opinion, was one of the best European players on World War II.
Were you surprised to not see Bance in the starting lineup back in Minnesota? Because that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah,
I was like, I know I've been out of this for a minute. I stepped away, but Bance isn't starting? What the hell?
But if you just look down the road, their roster, like they have a couple of what team were they on? Was Metals and those guys? What was their team name during Black Ops 4?
That was Gen
The
G?
Spanish. No, it was the Spanish team. I thought.
Spanish team. It starts with an A.
Heroics.
Heretics?
Yeah.
Heretics. Yeah. And those guys were nasty, man. These guys came out of nowhere. Like, I mean, me and Will used to go out in Europe and kind of make our own little stomping ground, and that scene's come a long way since then. Like,
It has.
I mean, there's so many different players and people are getting into it now, and the scene's growing, which helps players, up and coming players, to learn how to play the game and have more people to compete against, which in general makes the whole scene better. And just the fact that those guys are on the team, again, I'd be really interested to know if we can get information on the fact that these guys actually scrim against each other. I think that'd be a really big advantage for a team if you have a full roster like that.
Maybe that was their idea the whole time. That's the first time I had heard of that or thought about it. But yeah, just staying really secretive about what they're working on and not showing anything to anyone. That could work.
It's $100,000 to $150,000 investment to make sure you have a regular scrim partner, but
Better do something.
Better do something. Yeah, that'd be useful. Yeah, Huntsman 3-0.
All right, Huntsman 3-0. After all the love for potential Toronto practice, then we'll see how it unravels down the line.
I mean, yeah, I love all these guys, but we just got to be realistic, right? Like how things have gone so far. And the Huntsman win the last event, I wouldn't expect anything different.
So let's go to the rematch then. Rocker versus Toronto Ultra for the first one to exit the tournament. I know you thought the Rocker were moving through, but Will and I overpower your decision in our bracket. So therefore it'll be Paris versus Chicago in the second round, which is way more exciting to discuss anyway. But going back to Rocker versus Toronto, which purple team is stronger for the elimination match?
Sample size too low. I think it's gonna be a close one though. I think the Rocker, in my opinion, based on the talk I would expect the Rocker to win if they lose to Paris, because I'm expecting them to beat Paris to start with. So it'd be pretty bad for me to say, they're gonna lose the Ultra. They would beat the Paris, but they wouldn't beat Ultra.
Even I was gonna say I'll go with the Rocker on this one as well.
Yeah.
Both of you on Rocker. All right, so if we look at our standings, I just want to see how bad of a start this could potentially be for Toronto. If we did sub it out and Paris was here, are you guys comfortable saying that this would be Paris over top of Toronto, or do you think that Toronto beats Paris?
I kind of got Toronto going out first in that Group B pool.
I think so as well, to be honest.
So I think regardless of how that plays out between Minnesota and Paris, it's,
the sample size I think is low, kind of what we said, but I think just from what we've seen so far, it just seems like they don't have much going on for them right now. They need to figure some stuff out. I think they have I think they have a lot of potential, but maybe even have to the counter effect of having 10 players on your roster. You got a lot of people fighting to get their job. Does
that create animosity at some point?
Yeah,
knowing that,
yeah. Who knows? All right.
I don't know.
It'd be nice to get some insight on those things.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there in Atlanta. I'll try and weasel in for you guys. I'll bring a microphone. Just
there you go.
Broadcast it on Discord to you. Okay. So going back to our brackets here. Give me a second with the graphics here, friends. If you had Paris versus Chicago, last one went to a game 5. Do you have any faith in an upset? What are the odds? Let's go with this route, because I say that Paris has a 40% chance of causing an upset over the Huntsmen in a game 5. 40%? I also think there's a 75% chance that this match is over in 3.
Wait, what's the percentage chance it's a 3-0? 70%?
75.
Oh, okay. I do like
that. Which does not match any of the math if you're looking at how these teams have played so far.
Most biased human being in the world. I love it.
Those are my boys.
I feel you, man. You know, the funny part and the thing that people didn't expect at all from the Paris against Huntsman is that everyone went in like, okay, well, if Paris is going to have any chance of being a Huntsman, they're going to have to basically win both S&Ds and try and steal a respawn.
Yep.
But then Paris went up and just smacked him in Dom. Smacked him. Better lack of a term. They just basically won games that nobody thought they were going to win. Yep. And the playstyle and how they were doing it was just working. Nobody's like every other hardpoint Huntsman. I mean, there was a few games that were really close against Dallas on hardpoint, but for the most part, Huntsman have been really solid about their hardpoint.
Right.
And the shakiest part, at least from the first event standpoint, was our Huntsmen are going to be any good at S&D. You got a lot of kind of players that play similar styles in Search normally. They kind of hold these routes, and besides Envoy, I think for the most part, RCDs kind of sits back. Gunless in the past is mostly sit back. Formal also is a very kind of laid back kind of I'm going to sit there and play. And Scum has been more aggressive in the past years since we played with him. Yeah. But in general, it was like, is this going to work out? Like, obviously, someone's going to have to switch up how they kind of see things and how they play. But so far, obviously, it's worked out. They've been playing great. But again, coming back against Paris, I was like, okay, well, Paris has a chance if they can still respawn. But when they won the first hardpoint, I was like, what is this? Like, if they won a search, it could have easily been 3-0 the other way.
Right.
You never know. So I think this is the hardest match. Like, that matchup, based on what we saw last event, is probably the hardest one to call. Because if Paris come out and win that hardpoint again, you literally never know what's going to happen.
So you think if they come out and win that hard point, they could also just steal the next S&D, and before you know it, everybody's yelling at each other on Huntsman, and you just got 3-0.
I mean, you'd be kind of in shock. I would have been in shock if I was Huntsman to lose that first map against him in the first place. Like, this, the last thing you expect is those guys to come out firing like that. Yeah. But they did, and they did it repetitively too. Like, most of their hard points look really good during the event. So whatever play style they have, and again, this is the beauty of what the league offers this year is that you have time to prepare for matches. So Huntsman could have easily kind of went back and with Sender, their coach, kind of look over like what went wrong, why did these guys do what they did, and how did it work against our playstyle that's been working out so well so far. So again, they could be completely different. They could just get mopped and be like 250 to 10 because we figured you out. Good luck. Right. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm looking at the numbers. Huntsman 5-1 in Dom. It's about as good as you get. 6-1 in Search and Destroy, and 7-2 in Hardpoint. 18-4 map count overall.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard for Paris to do it twice and force that game 5. That's why I called like a random 3-0. I feel like just what you said. Sender is gonna be ready this time. You're not gonna catch him off guard.
And the only two hardpoints lost was to Paris that same match, right? It was map 1 and 4 if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So there you go. Like, they're 7-0 besides playing Paris. So you would think that they did some changes, elements, like prepare differently, but maybe they're going to ban one of the maps that they thought they couldn't figure out on, and their veto system's going to be different. So that's obviously there's a lot of effect and changes that can make that dynamic different. But it'll be interesting. I think it'll be real, if the matchup has happened or it does happen, it's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, They're definitely not going to overlook them. I was talking to RCDs and Scump in Chicago, and they were mentioning how well Paris was playing and how just annoying they are to play against. So they're not going to be overlooked. I think Chicago is going to come out gunning. So it'll be a close match. I don't know, 3-1, 3-2. I still think Chicago is going to come out on top.
I like these picks. So let's get down to the big one, Chicago versus Atlanta. We're just going to skip all of the rest.
To the finals.
Yeah, going straight to the finals here. Final 10 minutes of the podcast. Rambo Ray, let's just start here with big picture. If you were on the analyst desk before we get into this match, who are you highlighting your 2 players from each team? Who has the biggest impact in this battle? Okay, I think we're back up and running. We're good. We're good.
Hey, Mother Duck.
Hey, Mother Ducks. How you doing today?
That's my favorite all-time technical difficulty. What do you want to call it? Just stream of it. I watched that.
Quick background on that, guys. I was warming up before my main stage broadcast in a Halo 2 match, and there was Cloud going over a man cannon, or his Lunchbox going over a man cannon, shooting Cloud in the dick. And I was fortunate that only about a minute of my singing went out, because I was up there drinking Captain Morgan's and Dr. Pepper and going for a good 6-minute warm-up. Anyway, back to where we were leaving this one off, and that, of course, is the grand finals. Everyone's calling it now. It's going to be Huntsman versus the ATL FaZe in Atlanta's hometown in front of all of their favorite people. And Atlanta, without a doubt, I think was everyone's number one team leaving Minnesota, but they didn't play in London, and Chicago rocked that London event. Right.
And I kind of, as we were talking, the two players that are kind of the centerfold of both teams, in my opinion, are Envoy and Prisa. And Prisa's been a player that I honestly have all the regards for. This guy does it all. He will slay around the map. He will bait himself in a situation. He just seems like one of the most situationally aware players in the game right now. He just understands so well what the job at hand is in different scenarios, and he's able to kind of adjust and mold whatever he needs to do to help his team win in that specific scenario again. So I think he's going to be the guy to watch in that team. And then Envoy got the MVP last event. Scump played well. They all did really well statistically as a team. They kind of ran that event on that front. But I think Envoy is kind of that X factor for Huntsman. This guy's kind of the preset for that team. He just seems he's a newcomer. I honestly never heard anything about him until last year.
Yeah.
And this guy just took the scene by storm. Like he just seems like such a complete player on every front. He's killing it in search. He's just doing really well, holding his own at hard point, and he's doing well playing that kind of aggressive baity role too. And he just has no issues with it. And from when I watched when I've heard him play those tens or whatever scrims you want to call it, his communication seems on really top tier as well. So I think he's in my opinion, he's probably one of the reasons why that team is doing so well. Granted, they have a crazy slaying power, but it's kind of picturing what me and Will used to play back in the day when we had Scump and Merc. Like we were a team that was above all slayers, but also we'd be able to outthink our way of most situations in the game, which made us kind of really hard to beat. And I think that's why the Huntsmans are doing well. So seeing those two teams clash in that way and how strong from top to bottom those lineups. I mean, I didn't even talk about Simp and Abizi. Those two guys are just absolutely dominated all the last year. Like it's going to be a crazy clash. And honestly, like personally, I think that the searches from what we've seen so far, again, there's this false sample size for FaZe, and it looked really great. But I think Huntsman has that kind of weird edge to it. I think hardpoints and respawn, I think FaZe just looks so strong and so dominant right now. Even though Huntsman has played well, they've kind of come close to losing games against most of the teams so far. And then when FaZe played the Dallas Empire in the first event, I mean, it wasn't even close. It was kind of a mop. So just based on those kind of facts, I would say FaZe probably has an edge on the respawn modes. But search for the sample size as well that we've seen from the Huntsman play, it seems like they have their strategies down pat. They've had more opportunities to play it since FaZe only has 2 matches played on land. And I've heard a lot of things that teams don't really practice search outside of what they play at events. So I think that's a big point for Huntsman. So Huntsman might be in a situation where if they can steal a respawn and win the searches, they could come out on top. So, but regardless, it's gonna be an awesome match. It's gonna be. I'm really excited. My gut says there's a small chance that it's gonna be one-sided as hell.
Okay.
For whatever reason, but I'm expecting at least a 3-1, 3-2 for either team.
And I would give the edge of FaZe. They were in the same group because I want this meetup twice.
Right, you want to see it more than once. That's fair.
I wish we could see it multiple times. Will, what are your first impressions coming into this match?
I mean, look, I agree with Ray in the sense that I'm pretty confident in the Hunt and their S&D game. It just seems like there's always a player, at least from that team, that just absolutely goes off. But this FaZe team, the more I hear about them, after watching them in Minnesota, and then what you just said about them winning like 65 maps in a row, and even talking to Arcides and Scump, like they're a scary team. So I might even put my biases aside for this and say I think FaZe is going to win that one. I think FaZe probably comes away with like a 3-1, 3-2 victory in that.
Clip that, send it to Hector. Clip that, send it to Hector. Thank you.
But I hope they prove me wrong. But,
like in our days where we dominated like tournaments like Modern 3, for example, like we still lost maps in scrims. Like it still happened. We're talking to a team that like again, we don't know if it's true. Rumored says that they've won like 60 maps in a row. I don't care how bad your connection is or how good your advantage is. Like you're bound to lose a map here or there. Like it's going to happen. Right. I mean, to the opposite, like, do they just know everything about the game right away? Are they learning anything? Are you just like running people over where they're going to play another good team at an event and maybe they run into situations they haven't seen yet and they don't know how to react to? But again, I think just that roster just seems so generally understanding of what they need to do. And props to obviously, I'm sure Crowder replays was Crowder now, I guess.
You did right.
But Yeah, he has an intellect of the game that I thought was probably one of the highest at the time he stopped playing. And he's one of the players like TP who probably could just go back and get on the six and start compete again, and have a high enough brain kind of mentality, and obviously get the gun skill on Rusty and all that stuff. But those are players that can still play, which is super useful to have as a coach, and have a player who has this perspective at a high level of the game you're currently playing. Because it's easy for like someone to be like, oh yeah, this guy was really good in an old game. He probably knows everything about this game, but playing it and understanding the game for what it is a huge aspect of what being a coach is. And I think those guys are doing it very well.
I'm looking at some of these stats, and both teams are just ridiculous when it comes to their overall KD. Respawn KDs, the only map that the Huntsmen have less kills than deaths is going to be Hackney Yard. And so I really think the map bans is going to be important here, because FaZe, I think, matches with Huntsmen 1-for-1 in the KD without a doubt. And I think Simp is probably a step in front of everyone else. But Huntsman core, you look at this, you got Formal at a 1.19 overall. The lowest is Envoy or Envoy at a 1.05. Everyone's killing it. FaZe only had, 7 maps? Let's see where their numbers are.
I mean, if your role player is going positive, that's a saying, right? Like that's like saying if back in the day I would have had like a 1.1 KD while the rest of my team is all above that, like we probably would have never lost a map. Like it's just
you're getting more kills than deaths while you're like baiting yourself and jumping around corners, and
you're worrying more about what's going on in the map. That's scary, dude. That's a level of play that's very hard to achieve.
You ready for these overalls? Celium at Minnesota, 7 maps, 1.34. Lowest on the team. Oh, sorry, Simp above that, a 1.58. And then Abizi at 0.99 was the lowest on the team. So basically going even, doing some of the dirty work. This is going to be the most exciting Call of Duty match that we've had so far this season. I hope we get this in the finals. I think it's the match everyone expects. And I'm a little bit nervous if it does go to a Search and Destroy Game 5, because I'm looking at what happened against Dallas. FaZe 6-0'd them, and they got 6 first bloods.
Wow. FaZe got 6 first bloods.
FaZe got 6 first bloods. They got the first pick every single round, and they just set the tone. I remember, Will, we were looking at the numbers for Huntsman 2 episodes ago, and I believe they were losing first bloods, but still clutching up the rounds.
They were, yep. So they were starting off kind of slow. And I just feel like a team like FaZe is not going to make that mistake. Because if you get first blooded and end up winning the round, like the other team made a mistake. Right. It wasn't, I mean, yes, you could have like stepped up and made some crazy plays yourself, but if they're playing it correctly, you should technically lose those rounds. And a team like FaZe is just not going to give up too many free rounds. So
nope.
Don't get picked.
Don't get picked.
100%. And it's also the matter of like, from what I remember watching FaZe play, they weren't getting their picks with snipers, right? Because like if you get picked by a sniper, normally if you're like a 45 situation after that, it's not the worst place to be, right? Like, because you didn't really give up map position. They just kind of opened up a spot on the map, but you're able to rotate and react to what's going on. Mm-hmm. But if a team's constantly getting first blood rushing a space, then that's when it gets scary. Because if they get map position and numbers on an area around a bomb site, then that means they're planting the bomb, and your ability to retake man down is slim to none against a team like that.
Right.
And that's what it looked like. And to 6-0 a team in Search, a team like the Empire, and that you have to be playing that kind of way, right? Like we've seen a lot of sniper play, and again, I'm sure some of that first blood area was probably snipers as well. But when you're able to turn and not make any mistakes, and just, again, their sample size is small, but if that's kind of the retrospect what they're going to showcase for the rest of the year, that's going to be scary, man.
They weren't playing like that random type of search and destroy game.
No,
exactly. They were very deliberate in what they were doing and still getting first bloods, and just made it look like a cakewalk.
So
that's a scary squad.
Final survey answer. What is the final score? Who are our top 4? First of all, let's start with the top 4. 3rd and 4th place. Who gets to the semifinals? They get out of their group, but then they lose to either FaZe or the Huntsmen.
Go. Ray. No, you go. You go.
Not you, Ray. It's you.
It's you, Ray.
Man.
I know who I'm picking.
I'll bring the groups back up if you guys.
It's tough. I'd go with the Ravens making the outer pool again. And I mean, based on, I'm going to give it to Minnesota. I'm going to say Minnesota and Ravens are the teams that make it out to the semis. And
wow,
I'm going to go on a limb and say yeah.
Okay, Will, where are you going?
I was going to say Paris and London. So similar. I just think Paris takes it over the rocker.
I also had London squeezing out of the group. Hold on, let me pull this up one more time. Optic Gaming LA or the Royal Ravens. I think Optic start kind of screws the momentum. They're not going to do it. Mutineers over the Ravens. I'm going to go with Wuskins. I still got faith. So I think we're all going to say it's going to be Royal Ravens. And then the split is Will and I are going Paris. Mr. Rambo Ray has his faith in Minnesota. But the big question, the one that is worth the 20-point bonus, is who wins it all. Are we all going FaZe here? Because I'll go first. I got FaZe 3-1.
I agree. Don't clip it. I agree.
Don't clip it. What's the score though?
I'll say 3-2. I think it's going to be a 3-2 edge to FaZe.
I love all the players, and I have nothing to say bad against any players that are playing, but I think FaZe is going to 3-0.
FaZe is 3-0. Okay.
I think they just look that strong.
Is it close like Huntsman, Dallas Empire 3-0?
Yeah, I think so. I think all the maps they're going to play against each other is going to be close. I think the search is the only one that's kind of like, because the teams are so strong at it, normally when you get a roll going on a search and destroy map, it's hard to kind of break out of it. And because it's 5-on-5 and there's so much going on the map, like it's hard to kind of react to situations on the go. So if FaZe is getting all these first bloods, I don't think Optic really stands it. Or excuse me, Huntsman. Sorry, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep saying Optic for a while.
I do it in person. Sure. I've almost done it on the mic. I feel you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that search and destroy is gonna be a lopsided map regardless. I don't think it's gonna be like a 6-5, 6-4. It's gonna be like 6-2, 6-3 at best on whoever wins it. And I think again, just FaZe looks so strong, and I have a hard time going against that, just based on what we've seen and what everyone's saying about it. It just seems like it's kind of the route everything's looking at right now, until other teams can catch up and understand what they're doing better than everyone else.
All right, well, since none of us have a say in selecting this person, let's make it interesting. We all called FaZe, so tell me, who's the MVP?
I mean, I'd be
first again.
No, I'd be crazy not to say Priesta after all the talk up I gave him.
Priesta? Okay.
I think Priesta honestly he's that kind of player, right? That player does it all. And he again, it's a tough call because he doesn't really all do it statistically like kind of what a Nabizi and a Simp's going to do.
Right.
But just because of his mindset and how he plays around the map and his consistency through all the modes, he seems like the player I would think with Simp. I mean, Simp obviously is the kind of clear output because of his stats.
Yeah.
But if I was a person picking, it's obviously it's not all stats. I would kind of look at the output of how they're kind of playing the game and how they're molding your team. And if there's a way to kind of listen in, you would hear who are really kind of calling the shots and who are kind of putting himself out there. And if he's still dropping a really good KD doing it, then that to me that just shows how strong that player is for that team. So I would go with Priesta, but I think Simp would kind of obviously be a good choice.
Yes, and that's why I'm going to go with Simp. I totally agree with that rational line of thought that you just had, but nobody else thinks like that, and everybody's going to see the Simp stat line, and he's going to get the MVP. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with Simp. Maybe a Beezy, but I'll say Simp.
I'm going to go a third option here, so we'll see who wins all of the Scrimbucks of predictions, whatever that version is. I'm going with Celium. I feel like Simp is going to get all the hype. Everyone's going to be talking about Simp. Simp might even feel a little bit of the pressure, which even if he feels pressured, he gets MVP awards. But I think Celium should be able to be opened up on the map if Simp is getting shut down, and vice versa. This team is just too strong across the board. They all feel so similar to me when watching. I think it comes down to that Game 2 Search and Destroy. Whoever wins that has a chance of taking the series, but when it comes to the respawns, FaZe is looking dirty right now.
It's just
Chicago's looking dirty right now. I mean,
it's such a small sample size, right? We haven't really seen that many games yet, and it's easy to say what we've seen so far, but the game, you have to also think about, like, we're still in early stage of the game. The game's only been out for 3 months, and there's still constant changes going week to week, day to day for scrims. So some of these teams are figuring out new strategies, new angles to use on certain maps, new kind of search routes, and all the timings and whatnot. Like, all that's going to be figured out, and the amount of teams that are going to – the difference in gap of what you see teams is going to get smaller and smaller as the season goes on. And then it's going to become about who executes best, which is normally what it does for every Call of Duty game. So until that kind of gets to that point, I think FaZe is looking really strong and ahead of the curve. But I mean, Huntsmen are not far back. If anything, if they're not, they might not be at all, and they might just kind of wamboozle the world and take FaZe to the brinks. But we'll see.
Final question: do the Huntsmen get booed for the first and only time this season? when they match up against FaZe in this matchup in Atlanta?
I don't think so.
I think so. I think they do for
You
sure.
think they get booed?
You think they get booed?
Yeah, in Atlanta for sure. I mean, look, there's going to be Huntsman fans there, but I think in London and also in Minnesota, we saw, and I talked about it before, this whole franchise thing. It's turning people into like city-based fans, which I think is great. So I think that's a good thing for the league. Yeah, I mean,
I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Let's start some.
I think it's just going to take a little more time before we get to that point. I think there's still like those guys still have like huge fan bases. Formal and Scumper, the two guys who I always see streaming anyways. So it's like it's hard not to be fans of that team if you're a person who's kind of keeping up with Call of Duty and competitive. So until that kind of changes a little bit, I think the booing may not be as. But I think the fan base and even in Minnesota, you saw people kind of really get into it for your own team, which is really awesome.
Boo.
And I think that's a huge.
It's all
huge
about
part
the
of what they-
booze, Ray. It's all about the booze.
All right,
Imagine the
Atlanta
Ultra
is
just
going
come out
to
and
boo
destroy.
the Huntsmen on their way to a 3-1 victory, the official Puckett prediction. Ray feels like everyone's going to smile and shake hands, and we might go to a Game 5. Is that what you said?
For what? For the finals?
For the final.
No, I called it 3-0.
3-0, sorry. Ray's going the aggressive 3-0, and Willie's going that Game 5.
I'm going to be a little more conservative. Yes, I think Scump and Varsity, I think they can.
Of course, he's saying his team's
one
going to
map,
lose. You can't
two
just say
maps.
3-0.
Of course,
Right.
Of course.
You know how it is.
Let us know in the comments on YouTube what you think about this match, and get them in before the match goes down. It's happening this Sunday. That'll be February 22nd. And 23rd, I should say. And, of course, you can catch all of the action live from Atlanta. It's going to be on YouTube.com, where they're streaming all of the CDL events this year. But the better news is your own Codtacular podcast, which you just listened to an hour and a half of, is up on Spotify. We're almost up on iTunes, and we're going to be on Google Play in just a moment. And all of your donations are going towards getting a Rambo Ray new microphone. We're going off of the A40s. We're going to get Puckett hardwired in so the audio doesn't cut out, and we're all going to sound and look like Will.
I cannot wait.
We're shaving
Will
our
looks
heads.
great. Will looks great.
It's going to be incredible. Thank you.